Hello everyone, and welcome back to What If Deku Had a Corruption Quirk. In the last part, we barely wrapped up the UA Sports Festival, with Uraraka as the unexpected winner due to Deku's chivalry and not exactly wanting to fall on top of her. In this part, we're going to go over the internships. So let's get started. The next day, the students entered the classroom and sat down and waited for Aizawa to come in. When he came in, he addressed the students, telling them that there were heroes in the crowd that wanted to take them in as interns. He told them that this would be a great learning experience for them, and that it would help them to develop their quirks and help them find out how to make them the most effective. Now, he hits a button and a screen displays who got the most votes and from where. At the very top of the list, we have Uraraka, Bakugo, Deku, and Todoroki, with the rest falling in where they were in canon. Uraraka is surprised to see all the people who wanted to take her in as an intern, and so is Deku. But they wanted to think it over very carefully. After class, both Deku and Uraraka were walking down the hall when they saw All Might there. He was gesturing for them to come over. They went over to the corridor where he was, and they followed him into the staff room where he buffed down, since they obviously both know about his condition. And he talked to them about how his old master wanted to take them both in. And that's when his legs started to shake, and they were both petrified at what could have made All Might so afraid of his mentor. But they listened, and they applied to be the interns. Now, this was something that made Deku curious. You can understand why the Master of All Might wanted Uraraka, since obviously she has one for all, but he doesn't understand why All Might's master or teacher would want him. But they both went and got their hero suits, and they prepared to embark to their internships. The others going where they went in canon, and Deku and Uraraka going to Gran Torino's. They went by train together, and while on the way there, they talked about what they were expecting of All Might's teacher. They were wondering exactly who he was, since All Might didn't exactly tell them the name of the hero that they're going to be interning for. Uraraka thought that it would be a hero who had similar powers to All Might, or was more of a martial artist, like that taught All Might how to fight and how to throw a punch or use his quirk properly. Deku, on the other hand, thought that maybe the teacher of All Might would maybe be some hero that had the ability to keep up with him, more like enhanced reflexes kind of. But nevertheless, they both arrive at Gran Torino's agency, and they both open the door, and that's when they're met with the sight of an old man laying on the ground in what appeared to be a puddle of blood. They were shocked, freaked out even, that they just found an old man on the ground, supposedly bleeding to death. But when they got closer and tried to help him, he popped up off the ground saying that it was a practical joke and not to be freaking out so much. They both breathed a sigh of relief, having now realized that there was no one hurt, obviously, but this was not what they were both expecting. They weren't expecting a very tiny old man to be the hero who wanted them to intern for them. They were expecting like an older hero, but not that old. Not as old as Recovery Girl, in a sense. But he ended up telling them both to get their hero costumes on and to come meet him in the room when they're done. They both went into separate rooms and they put their costumes on and entered the room with Gran Torino. Gran Torino started with Uraka. He pointed out how during the sports festival, she obviously had a handle on using her quirk mixed with One for All in an effective manner, but he pointed out that she wasn't using the quirk to its best capacity. He told her that her better option would be to focus the energy throughout her body and charge it up and up to its highest limit, then use her float quirk to basically like make herself weightless and move towards the enemy at higher speeds and use the momentum plus the force from the quirk to deliver a decisive but brutal blow on the enemy or villains. Then he turned to Deku. When he looked at Deku, he pointed out that Deku seemed afraid of something. During the sports festival, he could see it in Deku's eyes. He was afraid. He was afraid to let it out, to cut the binds that restrained him in his quirk. He was afraid to let it out. But Deku, he knew that he was afraid that if he lost control, instead of being a hero, he'd be marked as a villain instead. Gran Torino told him that he has no reason to be afraid of his quirk. He has no reason to be afraid of what he can do, as long as he's able to keep it in his heart that he is doing the right thing and keep himself centered. Then there's no risk of him going on a rampage and hurting innocent people. Deku pondered this, But before he could say anything, Gran Torino had launched himself off of the floor and started bouncing around the room at a rapid pace. Faster than Deku could register even. He wasn't sure exactly what to do when he was suddenly struck in the back by Gran Torino kicking him. Gran Torino's told Uraraka to wait in the corner for him to teach the boy a lesson on knowing how to distinguish fear from ignorance. He told Deku that if he wanted to be a hero, that he needs to let go of this fear, this irrational idea of thinking that just because he uses his quirk, that it will make him evil in some sense. He told Deku that he wanted him to let it out. Don't let the quirk control him. Control the quirk. Take the charge and make it his. Bring it out. He challenged Deku to land a blow on him within 5 minutes. Deku, knowing that there was no other choice but to fight, he focused his mind and then got kicked again because he let his guard down to try and power out. Gran Torino told him that he's not going to get a minute to charge up his willpower in a fight, that he has to have the conviction to fight the villains, and that it's either do or die. His hesitation could cost a civilian their lives. Deku grasped this for a second and realized what he was saying was true. If he let his fear of what he could do with the quirk hold him back, it could cost someone their life. Someone could die because he wasn't strong enough to keep the conviction to protect in his heart and let it outweigh the dark side of his quirk. This sparked something in Deku. Something that he didn't think he'd be able to do. It got his heart racing. It got him excited. He charged his quirk to 10% and started trying to grab Gran Torino, predict his moves, watch the angles in which he's jumping from. He dulls his blades, and he starts to use the same tactic as Gran Torino to his advantage. This surprised Gran Torino. He wasn't expecting the kid to adapt so quickly to the training. He wasn't expecting Deku to start jumping off the walls like a kid that's pumped full of sugar. But Deku has a lot of surprises in him. He started using the walls as a way to leverage himself while jumping around, trying to disorient Gran Torino and make him second guess where he should try and hit Deku from, because Deku now he's moving really fast. Not fast enough to technically outspeed Gran Torino, but he's doing something pretty miraculous. Gran Torino was able to avoid Deku's strikes, but just barely. He was just barely able to stay out of Deku's reach. Then Deku started to change up tactics. Instead of using his daggers, he used his corrupted whips to start lashing around like a torrent of whips, like a tornado even, trying to make it to where Gran Torino was not able to see what was going on or counteract what Deku was doing. And within 3 minutes and 45 seconds, Deku was able to land a hit on Gran Torino. Gran Torino was impressed. Granted, the hit did not, knock Gran Torino out. The task was to land some type of hit, and Deku was able to land not a devastating hit, but something enough to where it was able to make contact with Gran Torino, and he wasn't able to dodge in time. Then Gran Torino turned to Uraraka. He asked her exactly how much percent of the quirk is she able to withstand in her body without it overloading her and causing an injury. I can't remember what I said last time, but I'm going to say she's able to use 32%. Because of her training with All Might and Deku on a regular basis, she's pushed it pretty far. Not to mention that the zero gravity kind of helps to alleviate the strain of pressure on her body by making the part of her body she's using weightless, in a sense. Kind of giving her a, whenever she's using the quirk, make her faster, make her more mobile. Now, Gran Torino wants to see her try and catch him this time, and whilst Deku sits in the corner. Now, Uraraka, she barely caught Gran Torino with an attack within 4 minutes and 52 seconds. She got pretty close to not accomplishing this, but after seeing how they think and react to the task at hand, which was to land a hit on him, he drew up a few conclusions in his head on exactly how the both of them can improve. Now, Gran Torino, he told Uraraka that she needs to focus more on trying to adapt to moving around in zero gravity more often. That way she's able to maximize her mobility and relieve the strain on her body when using the quirk. Now, obviously, I'm giving her 32% because of that idea that it does kind of take some strain off of her. But that doesn't mean that I'm just gonna say that just because she's able to do that she's able to jump to 52%. That's not how this works. I'm just saying that it's going to make it a lot easier for her to get to a moderate percentage at the point she's at. Now, he turns to Deku, and he asks Deku if he's ever tried to compress his corruption into certain points of his body. Kind of like armament, trying to make it to where his body is able to manifest things from certain spots, like condensing it. Deku, not really knowing what to say, he was surprised at Gran Torino's idea because it was marvelous to him. So Deku, he focused himself and he tried to compress his corruption into his arms. Very small points within his arms. He focused in on trying to center it within his body, insert in some fashion. And that's when Uraka and Gran Torino are amazed when they start to see his arms glow this dark aura. And this aura, because of how much pressure is being created by his arms, it tears up the sleeves of his hero costume. And on his arms, marks appear, almost like tattoos. Well, actually, they're like tattoos. They create like tattoos, like symbols on his arms. He has 8 in total. 2 on the palms of his hands, 2 on the back of his wrists, 1 on his forearm and on both sides, and 1 on his bicep on both arms, making the 8. It's semi-symmetrical, and they're amazed because somehow he condensed it into tattoos on his arms, but they start to wonder what these weird black symbol-like tattoos can do. And that's what when Deku opens his eyes, and he looks at the tattoos, the ones on the front and back of his hands, the ones on his forearms and biceps, and he looks very puzzled about exactly what they're doing on him. And that's when he puts his hands together, and whenever he separates his hands, a black chain almost amasses from his hand, almost like it's materializing from both palms out. At the end of the chains are a spike, something that would be more attuned to an impaling kind of spike, something that would cut through, sharp like a dagger. Very, very, very dangerous when used offensively. Then he tries to figure out the ones on the backs of his wrists. He focuses in on the mark on the back of his hand, and nothing happened. But then when he put his palm over it and almost gripped it, like he's grabbing something, and pulled it away, it created not like swords from his hands. But these swords, they have a ominous aura to them, almost like the weapons that he used to create before, but more potent, more enhanced, stronger than before. When testing out the one on his forearms, it created a staff. When using the one on his shoulders, it created a bow. Or bicep. His bicep. It created a bow. Now, they were amazed. Deku had somehow created weapons that would meticulously make him almost impossible to handle. A bow for long-range attacks, a staff for close quarters defense, 2 katana-like swords for cutting down the enemy, and a chain to restrain. They were surprised, to say the least. But Gran Torino wanted to get a more practical idea of what Deku could do. So he told them that they're going to train for a little bit, and then he's going to take them on a patrol. Let them get a feel for exactly how it works, and give them the ability to get used to it. They train for a bit in their skills, and when they're ready, they board the train. And they're traveling to... I can't remember exactly where, but that's when a giant winged Nomu bashes into the side of the train. It almost grabs Deku, but Gran Torino kicks it out and tells them to stay put. That's when Deku feels it. This sickening feeling in the pit of his stomach. It's like poison. It's like a disease. It's making him sick. He almost feels like he wants to puke. It's making him feel unimaginable. And that's when he realizes he knows who this is coming from. Before Uraraka can say anything, he jumps out of the train, and he starts following this sensation. He's worried. He can feel it fading away. He can feel the life force leaving the body. That's when he turns the corner, and he sees Ida on the ground with a sword in his shoulder. And standing over him is a man with a white bandana over his eyes, a black military-grade vest, two long ribbons on the back of his head, and an assortment of knives all around his body. Deku is unnerved by the guy he knows is Stain. Without even thinking, he powers up to 45%. This feeling in his body, it's rage. Pure fury for Stain towards the one who hurt one of his friends. He jumped towards Stain, and he pulled out his swords. And just before he could make contact, Stain brought up his sword and blocked him and pushed him back. But Deku wasn't done. He bolted again, but this time he pulled a feint and went for Stain's legs. Barely getting him, Stain was able to jump away before Deku could completely lop off his leg. But Deku didn't realize that he was cut too. He had a nick on his face. He turned around, and just before he could leap towards Stain again, his body locked up. It was like he couldn't move an inch. That's when Stain turned to him and said, "Another hero trying to save one of my victims. Do you realize that this one right here, The reason he's here isn't because I targeted him. It's because he wanted revenge. Revenge for what I did to his brother. Revenge for me trying to cleanse this twisted hero society. You would put your neck out for a vengeful hero. Not trying to do it to protect Native right there. He's doing it for selfish reasons. And you want to help him? Deku looked up. Fury burning into Stain from his eyes. Stain, he looked down and he shook his head. He said that this next generation of heroes really is screwed up. Just as corrupt as the last. And that's when when Deku looked up and told Stain, I'm not here just because I want to save him. I'm here to put you down for all the heroes you've hurt. Not only that, you're hurting my friend. I don't care if he's here for revenge. You're a villain. Yes, you may be taking down some more corrupt heroes, but what you're doing is wrong, and I'm going to stop you whether you like it or not. Stain starts to laugh. Exactly how do you think you're gonna do that, little hero? I used my quirk, and now you're stuck on the ground, sitting there helpless as I stand over you and watch you squirm like a worm on the sidewalk in summer heat. That's when, all of a sudden, from behind, he struck with a furious hit, knocking him on the ground. He rolls instinctively and looks at where it came from. Standing there was a girl with brown hair. Deku, having seen her, tells her she needs to get out of here quickly, not to worry about him and Ida, but to run. She looks at Deku and tells him that she's not going to leave him to fight Stain all by himself. That's when Deku notices something. He notices that Uraraka has her hand on her phone. He thinks maybe she's trying to call for reinforcements somehow. But nevertheless, Stain gets up and he charges towards Uraraka. She's able to dodge right past him, and luckily not get hit. But unfortunately, Stain was able to follow her movements, and he threw a knife towards her, barely getting her in the hand. She pulled the knife out and threw it, having seen exactly what he did with Deku's blood. He wasn't going to risk him doing it to her. At this point, Deku, he's starting to feel sensation in his hands, like he's able to move a little bit. All this negative energy around him, the chaos from the Nomus, Stain, it's too much power. It's overloading his system. And then that's when he starts to smile. A wicked, ear-to-ear smile. Slowly, he starts to get up, which shocks Stain, because he shouldn't be able to stand for another 20 seconds if his blood type is O. That's when he notices Deku's not getting up as fast as before. He's fighting against the blood curdle. He's fighting to move his body. This doesn't settle right with Stain. He thinks to himself, not even Endeavor would be able to move. No one has ever been able to move unless the effect wore off, so how is this kid able to do it? At this point, Deku's power is burned up to 70%. He's slipping into madness. But the tattoos on his arms are somewhat mitigating the effect. He's slipping, but not as bad as before. He's not able to move very much, but he's able to move enough to do something. That's when Stain charges forward, trying to deal with the problem. He rushes towards Deku, trying to cut him again, but Deku is able to moderately jump up into the air, and since Uraraka is like a little bit next to him, she takes the opportunity and punches Stain in the side, this causing him to bash into a wall hard. He coughs up a little bit of blood, but then he rebounds off of the wall and goes towards her. And that's when Deku comes from above and smashes him into the dirt. Stain was not expecting this. The kid moving was something that he was not prepared for. It's got him panicking. So he's off his game. That's when the effect fully wears off. Stain, in an angry state, starts to throw his knives and keep his distance away from them. Unfortunately, he's able to get Deku in his leg and Uraraka in her shoulder. This making it to where it's a little bit harder for Deku to move around, and Uraraka is not exactly able to have full mobility of her arm. Ida yells for them to get out of here, that this is his problem, and that it should be him that gets revenge on Stain for what he did to his brother, not them. Uraraka and Deku look to him and tell him that he's a moron, trying to do this alone, when if he would have asked them, they would have gladly helped him. This pulled on the heartstring of Ida. He wasn't expecting them to be supportive of what he was trying to do, trying to get revenge for what Stain did to his brother. It made him tear up a bit. Stain, thinking that he's got an opening to strike, he leaps towards them as fast as he can to slash at them. And just as he's about to make contact with Uraraka's neck, a giant pillar of flames shoots by and hits Stain, scorching him a little bit before he's able to get himself out of it. And that's when Deku realizes Uraraka called for Todoroki to back him up. That's when Ida starts to pull the blade out of his hand because he's able to move again. Now it's 4-on-1. Deku, creating the chains out of his hands, shoots them out in an attempt to either injure or capture Stain in some fashion. Stain uses the opportunity to knock away the chains before he's ambushed on his right by Uraraka, who's coming in with a mighty punch. He's able to dodge and stick a knife right into her thigh. But before he's able to lick the blood that's on the knife, Todoroki shoots ice, encasing the knife and keeping him from getting to it. Stain leaps towards him, trying to slash at him, and that's when Deku uses pulls out the staff and blocks it. Surprisingly, Stain wasn't expecting that a staff would be able to withhold the sharpness of his blade. But he doesn't know that Deku has finally gotten the best of him. See, because of the fact that now the sword, it has prolonged exposure to the staff and the prolonged exposure to Deku's other weapons, he's able to imbue the corruption into Stain, causing him to have hallucinations that trip him up, make him see things that aren't there. This making it harder for him to defend against these 4 UA students. Ida comes in and sweeps him in the leg before trying to perform an axe kick, him rolling out of the way just barely before Deku was able to charge in and kick Stain, making him hit a wall. Then Uraraka jumped in to try and punch him, but just barely misses. Todoroki uses his fire and ice in an attempt to both prevent him from getting close while also trying to subdue him. He's able to get Stain's right leg, but Stain quickly reacts and smashes the ice before seeing something that looks like it came from behind him, but it was illusion that he saw. That's when Deku was able to get up behind him and punch him in the back, causing him to fly up into the air. And while in the air, both Uraraka, Deku, and Ida blast into the air, all 3 of them making contact with Stain, causing him to throw up blood in the air before falling to the ground unconscious. They did it. They were able to take down Stain. They grabbed Stain and started carrying him out of the alleyway. Ida went to check on Native, and as they got out of the alleyway, a flying Nomu came out of nowhere and grabbed Deku by the shoulders, carrying him off. Deku's arms were immobilized by its talons. Just before the Nomu was able to carry him away, Stain got up, ran up a building and jumped and stabbed the Nomu into the head. They all see this, and that's when Endeavor gets on the scene, seeing what just happened. The hero killer Stain saved a student? He was amazed. He didn't know what to say. Plenty of people in the area saw what happened, and as they landed on the ground, Deku had gotten to his feet and taken 10 steps back in preparation to continue the fight. But Stain was out of it. He was laughing. And that's when his bandana fell off. He said, "None of you heroes are worthy of killing me. Only All Might is worthy." And at that moment, after the bandana fell, a murderous aura of intent to kill washed over the area. It flooded over everyone in the vicinity. They were bathed in the madness, in the killing intent. It almost drove Deku to the edge, but he was able to contain himself. That's when Stain doubled over onto the ground, unconscious. Endeavor walked over and picked up Stain. He hoisted him onto his shoulder, and he called for some medics to come help the kids. Deku was severely hurt. He put too much pressure and strain in his body. He's got bloody wounds. Uraraka's had 2 different cuts, one in her thigh, one in her shoulder. It wasn't something fun. And Ida suffered many blades to his legs. Todoroki was mostly unharmed, other than the fact that he had a couple scrapes and bruises from trying to defend from Stain's attacks. They were all admitted to the hospital, where they were treated. Unfortunately, they told Deku that he might have a problem using his hands for about a couple weeks, but that nothing other than that is too serious. Uraraka had to get a lot of stitches in her shoulder, hand, thigh as well. They told her that she might limp for about a month or 2, have a little bit of difficulty, but that they'd give her something that would help with her leg until it fully healed. That she'd have to be careful with using her hand. Ida had the worst of it. He took 3 knives into his forearm, 2 in his leg. It would take a lot of healing to fix the damage. Recovery Girl could easily fix it for him, but he decided that until he became the kind of hero that his brother would be proud of, that he'd keep it. Deku understood why he felt so strongly about it. In fact, he admired that Ito had such strong conviction. That's when the detective came in, and he looked over the 4 students. He told them that since they're not registered heroes, that they wouldn't be able to take the credit for taking down the hero killer. That they'd have to give it to Endeavor, which pissed off Todoroki because he doesn't want to give his father anything. No glory, nothing like that. The detective said he's sorry, but he's doing it to protect them from repercussions for having overstepped and having taken on something that was not theirs to take on. He said to them that they may not get the applause of the people, and that's when he bowed, but that he hopes that they would accept his thanks for doing them a service, that they were true heroes that day. They rescued a pro hero who otherwise would have died if they didn't step in, that they would probably still be chasing after the hero killer if it wasn't for them taking action, and he's sorry that he has to do it to them, but that if the circumstances were different, that he'd be proud to call them true heroes. They all heard this. They all processed it before realizing exactly the weight of his words. They were heroes, for real. They stopped something that could have led to a lot more heroes dying. They took some pride in that. They were able to prevent him from hurting another one. Of course, they weren't going to get the glory they wanted, but at least they saved a pro hero from dying a horrible fate. Within a couple of days, they were released, and Recovery Girl was able to heal Deku and Uraraka's injuries at least most of the way, but she couldn't fully fix the problem that their bodies would have to heal the rest of the way, and that she did all she could. This was something that they had a hard time processing. They took down a notorious villain that killed a lot of heroes. They were excited, obviously, but at what cost? They basically got their interns, the ones that did the heroes that took them in as interns, they got them in trouble. Obviously, Endeavor, since they're using him as the one who took down Stain in the report, he obviously didn't get in trouble, but Gran Torino and Manuel got in severe trouble because of what they did. Granted, Gran Torino and Manuel were very gentle with them. They understood that things happen, that their reactions were warranted in a sense, but that they're heroes in training and that they need to be careful not to just throw their lives away. They felt bad for getting them in trouble, but they all were praised by the heroes that they interned for. Manuel praised Ida for his courage, even if it wasn't for the right reasons, in saving another hero. And Gran Torino was proud that both the next carrier of One for All and Deku would become great heroes. And that's where we're going to end part 4 of What If Deku Had a Corruption Quirk. I hope you all have a good one, and remember, the shadows are watching.